Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of AutoCentral, South Africa's #1 motoring podcast. And my name is George Mienie, and as usual, joined by none other than Wandile Sishi. How's it, Wandi?
Hey, how's it going, George?
Yeah, good.
I can't see your face live today, but it's okay.
That's all right. It's okay. We're doing this remotely, obviously, ladies and gentlemen, because of we would have just entered level 4 lockdown. I saw a funny image the other day, one day, where somebody had taken our president and put a beard on him, and at the bottom the caption read level 4 lockdown 2036 or something.
Yeah, it feels like it's been just about that long. I've noticed that I'm actually gaining weight, so I have to watch myself, or else by the time I go back to the office, I'm going to be around.
Oh, goodness me. No, you could never be around. You're too skinny to be round.
Okay,
there we go. What happened to Hamilton on the weekend?
Verstappen slows down to take the checkered flag.
I don't think anything happened to Hamilton this weekend. I think what happened was Red Bull was just quicker. There was nothing I could fault them on. Mercedes did well themselves, but they just weren't as quick. So it's going to be a tough.
So Verstappen still leads the championship, yeah?
He still leads the championship by about 20 odd points. So he's almost at a point where he's got one race in hand. So let's hope that Honda engine stops being so reliable.
It's killing us. All right, let's move on before this becomes a reality. Let's move on. All right, so in today's episode, we are going to we're coining this episode South African Icons. And after we've unpacked, taking a look back at some of South Africa's iconic cars, we'll be talking to our very own expert journalist, Martin Pretorius, who's going to join us to unpack a real new age legend who might fit into the category of these icons, and that is the BMW, the new BMW 330 IS. We're going to talk about that.
And that's an exclusive.
Absolutely exclusive,
right?
Yeah, to South Africa, as BMW has done in the past. And then lastly, we'll be answering some of your Ask AutoTrader questions from our Ask AutoTrader platform. So first off, Wandile, where can people find the show? Where can listeners find us?
So if you want to get the show first, we're streaming live every single Monday at 9 a.m. sharp on cliffcentral.com. Other than that, if you want to see some of the cool stuff that we have in studio, unfortunately, we don't have that today, but usually you can also just see the feed live at 9 a.m. as well on the AutoTrader SA YouTube channel. If you're doing that, please, drop down a comment. Tell us what you guys think about the show. Even if you dislike it, tell us what you guys think, and we'll definitely use that for the next shows. And last but not least, if you want to listen to the show at your convenience, you can also find it on Spotify, iTunes, basically any sort of streaming service. You'll probably find the show there as well.
You'll find AutoCentral show everywhere on everything. You just need to Google AutoCentral or AutoTrader SA, and you'll pretty much find us. All right, so South African icons. Let's get it right into it. Over the years, there have been many South African classic cars, and I don't mean classic cars as in old cars. I mean really at the heart of the car being South African. Whether built here or imported, but mostly built here. And some of these cars are exclusive to South Africa. And many people won't know that these are exclusive or were exclusive to South Africa, just like the BMW 330 that we're going to review just now. So let's unpack some of these. So Wandi, in your opinion, which car do you think is the ultimate South African classic?
Okay, so I think there's 3 classic models in the history of South Africa. These 3 cars, at least in my lifetime, have been synonymous with South Africa. The first one being the Toyota Quantum, everyone's favorite taxi vehicle. You can't admit that, or you can't not admit that they're just a staple of South African roads currently and years gone by. The second is the BMW E30, which I think is actually on this list. It's a classic, lots of fun memories of that. And then last piece is the City Golf, which growing up for me was just absolutely everywhere. Those are the 3 classics for me. What about you?
I have to say, we'll get into it just now. It would be the Botsotso. And we'll tell you what the botsotso is just now. But I owned a botsotso in my day, or back in the day, and that's probably one of my favorites, the ultimate South African.
It's
classic.
a legend.
It's a legend. It's an absolute legend. So if you don't know what the botsotso is, stick around. Wandile and I are going to tell you what the botsotso is. So if you go to any other country in the world, you probably quickly notice that they have unique DNA on their roads. And for instance, if you go to the US, pickup trucks. What other countries do you find there are unique DNA on the roads?
I'd say my hometown, or my family's home country, I guess, would be Mozambique. And Toyotas are absolutely everywhere on those roads. You can't escape them. But that's pretty much everywhere in Africa, if you ask me. It's kind of the staple of the African continent. It's just painted red with Toyota.
Exactly.
And then in France is definitely Renaults. They don't let anybody else in, so
they don't let anybody else in. And then I suppose if you go to France, the French, you'll see Renaults all over the place. French like sticking to their Renaults. But here's the top 15 South African iconic cars, and from the City Golf to the VR6, we've decided to list them. And for maximum kudos, we'll take a look at the GTI badge on the bum as well. So first, as you mentioned it just now, the Toyota Quantum. What do you think of the Toyota Quantum?
Basically, I used to take taxis back in my day. I hated taking the taxi, but I can't not admit as well that I was never late for any sort of class, because taxis are never late. They keep our country going, and so many people on the roads and to their destination. So,
there's one
love
thing,
them or hate them.
There's one thing about a taxi. They're never late, because they will get their passengers there, even if they have to skip every red traffic light, break every road law, stop anywhere. But, you probably get there on time. So, so the Toyota Quantum, and I suppose before the Toyota Quantum was the Toyota Hi-Ace.
Yeah, that was, and before that, even I think the Caravelle was also kind of swimming around there, but somewhere. I think the quantum kind of took it to a whole new level. That's when we really understood that, wow, this public transport is a real thing, and damn that driver.
And then the Toyota Hilux.
SS favorite car, most sold for, I don't know, as long as I've been in the industry, it's been the most sold South African vehicle. I'm not sure what the numbers are around the world, but definitely in South Africa, the Hilux has to be a staple.
Doesn't the Hilux double cab or even single cab and the Toyota Quantum and Hi-Ace share the same configuration or chassis? I think, if I'm
not mistaken, I think you might be right. I think the Quantum and the Hilux may have a similar engine, if not the same engine.
I think the same engine and chassis. It's just a body.
It could be the same chassis as well. Yeah, it could be.
So you can just picture that on Mzansi roads, the Hilux there would be a hole in Mzansi without the Toyota Hilux. They've been around for 5 decades.
I wonder why. I know that obviously the reliability factor is a huge aspect there, but I mean, they've been around for over 5 decades, right? Specifically the Hilux. So why do South Africans love this vehicle so much? Like, what is it about it that's become so entrenched in travel and mobility on South African roads?
I think it's just Toyota's drive into the African continent, really. So, and then let's get on to the iconic BMW E33 series. So the BMW has been a South African standard for many years, and few have drifted into the South African car culture like the BMW E30. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about when I say the BMW E30, you will know what I'm talking about when I talk about the BMW 3 Series box shape.
Yeah,
you know what I'm talking about.
How can I not know what you're talking about? It's
I mean, it's before your time, but still iconic enough for you to know.
100%. The first post I ever had, BMW one specifically, was exactly that vehicle. The E30 started my love affair with BMW. There were always this vehicle that was so far away and just so cool, and rear wheel drive, and it there were just they were just cool cars.
Yeah.
And all the cool people had them. So yeah, man, that E30.
Let's get into the South African names for the E30. So you got the 325 and the 325i and the 325IS, which is the Shadowline version, which had a different body style kit on the outside. I had one of those. So what was the common name for the 325?
So the 325i specifically was the Gusheshe, the legendary Gusheshe from the years back. But like you mentioned, the IS, that was kind of the cool one, the one where the cool guys had the specific one. I think you actually had that exact.
I had the Botsotso, and loved that car. Gave me gearbox trouble. When you couldn't quickly gear shift in a 325. It was difficult. The gearbox didn't allow you to quickly get the gear shift isn't as quick as a GTI back then. But then we move on to the South Africans exclusive, the 333i, which was only brought to South Africa or only built in South Africa, was the 333i. And the reason the 333i was synonymous or only in South Africa, it had a 7 Series engine and Alpina parts. And body styling, and this BMW 333i E30 was a favorite, and the reason it was so popular was because we never got the M3.
Yeah, we didn't get the M3 at the time. So BMW
model
basically listened to the South African public after the fame that the Potsotso and the Gusheshe got. It only made sense that they gave us something to kind of stop everyone crying. Which I think, in my opinion, was a better way to go. I mean, Alpina is kind of the AMG flag of BMW.
It was that was pre AMG, really.
Yeah, exactly.
Alpina was the thing. I remember the Alpina rims on the 333. It was beautiful.
Super, super rare, super, super special. If you had one, I mean, those things can go up for past $1 million now. They're super expensive and extremely rare to find. They're just legendary vehicles.
I should never have sold my Botsotso. Anyway, be that as it may, she's gone. Then who can forget the Volksy, the VW Beetle?
Herbie. So many names can be given to the Beetle.
Herbie goes
I've never actually liked the Beetle. I thought the styling was strange. But
I love the Beetle from its sound. It's just got this like flat 4 whistly sound that the Beetle. It's just like the Beetle is something else.
Yeah, I've seen some restored ones. I saw, which was absolutely stunning. It gave a new meaning to the vehicle. It didn't have the same engine. I think it had an engine swap, but when you see one, it's a Beetle. It's not a Porsche, it's a Beetle.
No, exactly. Well, I mean, it's a Porsche in many ways. And then the VW Microbus. Who can forget David Kramer?
Yeah, as South African gets.
Yeah, well, that's a South African gets, which is a Veldskun David Kramer, and then that was superseded by the Caravel, and I think the Microbus was also part of the taxi environment for a little while. You saw a few of them. I mean, you don't see them anymore. You only see the Quantum now and those kinds of vehicles. But you used to see the VW Microbus in the taxi world as well. Did you ride in a Microbus versus a Hilux?
I mean, I rode in microbuses on like private things, but in terms of as far as public transport goes, I was pretty much always in a Quantum.
Okay.
I was staying in Pretoria at the time, and they were just everywhere. You would kind of avoid a microbus or Caravel because by that time they were kind of run down. So you definitely went for the Quantum.
And then who can forget? I mean, I could never forget. I loved this car. I wanted one. I almost bought one. Was the Opel Kadett. And it was legendary for motorsport or in motorsport. And I remember the Kadett T and the GSI, but particularly the Kadett T because I think it was the first turbocharged Opel Kadett.
I think so too. Specifically, I think that was a Superboss actually.
Yes, you're right.
Which was, it was legendary in South African racing scene. I can't remember what group it is. It wasn't Group A. Could have been Group A, but the Cadets, the Superboss Cadet was a legend. And after it won so many races in the racing scene, then a lot of people sort of realize that, oh my God, I can get the same sort of performance in my own car that I can get in this racing car. So
I remember
big love affair with it.
I remember the Cadet T Superboss and the electronic gauges, and I mean, now I've got that in my iPace, and but back then, I mean, that was like, I was a
legendary
young teenager when the Cadet T Superboss and its electronic gauges was like, wow. Now every electric car has, and even ICE vehicles have it. And then the Toyota Cressida. My parents had a Toyota Cressida.
My uncle had a Cressida. My neighbor had a Cressida. Everyone had a Cressida.
There's a Cressida for you, a Cressida for you, a Cressida for you.
Everyone
can have a Cressida.
It's like Toyota was giving them away for free or something. Everyone had a Cressida. It's crazy.
It's like it's the 5 Series of back then, if you think about it, or even the Toyota Camry. If you remember the Toyota Camry, Toyota Cressida preceded the Toyota Camry, I think.
Yeah.
But everyone had
exactly
a Toyota Cressida. If you were a businessman, you wanted a Toyota Cressida.
All the businessmen had them. All your shady uncles had one.
Did you have a shady uncle?
I had a shady uncle, and he drove a Cressida.
And then the Toyota Corolla. And one of South Africa's best-selling cars was the Toyota Corolla, and it's a vehicle that I think was, and then became the Uber, and then nobody wanted it anymore.
Became the Uber, yeah. I think for a large part, I think it's unfair on the Corolla because it's such a brilliant car.
That's awesome.
It does everything that you need. But it's kind of synonymous with your Uber ride now, which is a good thing. I think it's getting the same sort of slack as a Quantum would. You see a Quantum and you don't realize that you can also buy it for personal use. The Corolla is the same. It's not just an Uber car. It's
exactly
the reason why Uber, well, there's so many of them, is because they just work really well.
And they last, and they absolutely last.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that brings us to the end of the South African icons, and hopefully you remember as a listener one of those. I definitely remember one, and that was the Botsotso, because I had one. But a lot of those were I had a GTI as well, which we spoke about right at the beginning. I had a black VW Golf GTI, which was not the classic GTI. It was after the Rabbit style. GTI, but we didn't speak about the Rabbit. I don't think it was in South Africa, and it wasn't iconic to South Africa. That's why we didn't put it on the list. But that sort of city golf shape in the GTI, and then GTI still
golfs
on the roads
in
today.
general.
Golfs in general, exactly.
Very much a part of us. So I agree.
So let's get Martin Pretorius in here, and let's talk about another South African icon, which is the new BMW 330IS. Now, one of my first questions to Martin, and there we go. Welcome, Martin Pretorius. How are you?
Hey, Martin.
Hello, George. Hello, Wandile. Nice to be back.
Yeah, nice to have you back on the show. So you're gonna take us through the what may become the legend or a new legend, the BMW 330IS. Now, I was wondering, back in the day we had the 325IS, which was called the Shadow Line. That was the S, what the S stood for. Is this the same? Is it IS because of the Shadow Line, or is it just kind of called the IS?
It's mostly a marketing exercise, unfortunately. It's basically a normal 330i that was built in Germany with 330IS edition stickers, some M Sport body kit, styling goodies, beautiful wheels, and a blackout Shadow Line trim kit. And that's actually pretty much where the similarities to the old car ends.
Okay. All right. So it does have some of the Shadow Line trimmings, which kind of like makes it a bit of a Shadow Line.
Yeah, it does. But the problem is you can actually order those trimmings on a 320 diesel as well.
Oh.
That's a bit of a problem. That's a bit of a sticking point for me.
Okay.
I mean, back in the day with the 325IS, you had a 325IS. You couldn't buy a 320 diesel or a 4-door even with those same trimmings, and that gave it a bit of exclusivity.
Okay.
Unfortunately, that's missing with this car.
So you're going to get a 320 DS. It just doesn't sound the same.
But I mean, this car comes after, like, you know, you kind of alluded to it. This is a South African exclusive. You can't get it anywhere else, and it's kind of a homage to the history of, I guess, the 325 IS in the hearts of South Africans. Is this trying to do the same thing?
Yeah, it's your word of your use of the word homage is perfect. It references the old car, but it doesn't try to be the old car. And I think that's where many of the shoppers in South Africa kind of miss the point. They expect a hardcore track-bred racing car, but it actually isn't.
So what are your first impressions of this 330 IS, Martin, in terms of driving it?
I love driving it. First of all, I know you had an E30 325i.
Yes.
This car actually recalls the old one in a few key points. The chassis balance, the direct steering, all those nice things are actually all present. But what really amazed me was the comfort, the ride quality and the ride comfort that this car exhibited. I mean, I took it out. Pretoria and Joburg residents will know that the old Joburg road is absolutely horrible. It's corrugated and potholes and things. And after my normal test drive run, I actually took it on this road, which was the worst tar surface I could imagine at my disposal at that time. And it just glided over it. And that's amazing, considering that this car runs on 20-inch wheels with rubber that's about this thick.
Yeah. Which tells you what kind of suspension's built into this car.
Fantastic suspension. And the engineers tuned it to perfection as well. So if you want to just cruise, it's a nice, lovely, comfy cruiser. But if you actually want to hustle it along, it bites into the whole sporty vibe. And it gives you pretty much all the sensations you could wish for, except the soundtrack.
What soundtrack is in the exhaust soundtrack?
Yeah, well, the engine soundtrack, engine exhaust intake.
So what is this? Is this a straight six?
No, it's a 4-cylinder 2-liter turbo.
Okay, that's why. Because
that's why.
So it was the old Shadowline was straight six, if I recall.
That is correct, and that gave it a very distinctive oral signature, which this new car just doesn't have.
But it's quicker.
But in compensation, it has a fair bit more power, and it's quite a lot quicker than the old one could ever dream of being.
One of my bugbears of my 325 back in the day was gear change. Now I'm assuming that this has DSG or automatic gearbox, so you don't have to. It's not a manual gearbox, I'm assuming, so you can't even compare. But one of my bugbears with my 325 was gear changes, and you couldn't shift from first to second particularly quickly. You could shift from second to third for some reason particularly quickly, and you couldn't shift from third to fourth quickly either. So only second to third was a quicker change. I don't know if you recall that, or if you've driven one where you've experienced that in the E30 model. But my gear changes were my biggest bugbear. It would often grind the gears into second if you tried it too quickly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. With the E30 with that problem, as well as the E34, which I owned for a number of years. BMW manual gear shifts historically haven't been especially good, but they've gotten better with electronic assistance and all sorts of clever hydraulics and things. But fortunately, this new car is an auto. Fortunately or unfortunately, depending on your point of view.
Okay.
Yeah,
because it uses the ZF 8-speed auto, and everyone who's into cars will tell you that is probably the best automatic gearbox out there at the moment.
Okay. All right. So gear shift issues from the Shadowline has gone in this particular instance, and that's probably because of the latest technologies. Interior trimmings of the car. I mean, I remember the Shadowline back in the day having beautiful interior trimmings. One biggest problem with the E30 was the cracking of the dashboard, because I don't think the materials the dashboard were made of were very good.
Well, the new one is trimmed almost exactly like a normal 3 Series. The build quality is absolutely top-notch. I cannot fault the Germans on their efforts in building this car or assembling it properly. The materials are of a high standard right through, and I think that's probably where most owners or most buyers will see the biggest difference between the current or the new 3 Series and the predecessor. The quality definitely took a major step upwards for the new car.
Lovely, lovely. And so the price of this car, Martin, what is it going for?
Well, you can't buy a new one anymore.
Oh,
Yeah.
It's not available new anymore. It's retailed at 1,000 rand short of 900,000, which is a serious chunk of money for a 4-door compact saloon with a 4-cylinder engine.
Are you saying you can't buy one new because they're all sold out?
They're all sold out, yeah. So that's the bad bit. The good bit is you can actually build an exact replica of this car, except for the badge, just by ticking the appropriate option boxes.
I'm sure if you go to Fordsburg or something, you're going to find the badge.
Probably. So then there will be 231 or 232 instead of just the 230 that officially came in. It's inside and outside. It's a 330i with the M Sport kit, which brings sport seats and a nice body kit. Then it has the blackout trimming, shadow line trimming they call it, and the wheels. So all of those things are
optional extras
available as options. So you can build an exact replica, barring the badge, for about the same money now.
Okay. Interesting. Wow. So very finally, Martin, your score out of 10 for this BMW 330IS?
I'd give it 8.5.
8.5?
It's so close. Yes, it is so close to perfection. It's actually scarcely believable. And to think that BMW came from the previous Gen 3 Series to this one, it's a quantum leap forward. It's a great car, and I believe it's actually the best in its class now.
Wow.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah.
8.5.
The only downside for me there is yes, I know this is a special edition that was built for South Africa, but the fact that you can replicate most of the elements except for the badge by ticking some options does take away some of the exclusivity, and that kind of makes it harder to justify the price. But that's about it. Those are my only points of concern with this 330IS edition.
Do you think it's going to become legendary like the Botsotso or Gusheshe?
It's still too soon to say. I have noticed that of the 330IS editions listed on site, some of the sellers are already inflating the prices. So it's quite possible that this car might appreciate in value, but it will probably take a good few years before that really kicks in. So it remains to be seen.
Remains to be seen. Well, Wandile, where does 8.5 out of 10 sit in the rest of the cars that we've reviewed? I reckon there's a handful of cars that compete, right? I mean, if I remember the Mercedes-Benz, which one was it again?
It was the A35. So it sits fairly high on the list. And I'm glad it's there. It's the first time we've seen a BMW finally claim some sort of kudos in our listing. So
now that Hamilton's lost, at least BMW is there and Wendy's still smiling.
That's all I can get.
Be that as it may. Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Our expert journalist Martin Pretorius reviewing the BMW 330IS. Shadowline, should I say, and hopefully this car becomes legendary because of its iconic link to the Shadowline back in the day, the 325IS, but maybe not, because you're able to tick all the optional extras and make your own Shadowline effectively, and maybe buy your badge in Fordsburg if you like. So if you want to go and read more on this particular vehicle or any others that we've reviewed for that matter, you can go to the AutoTrader platform and go and search at feature trim level and go and find out what our expert journalists like Martin Pretorius have to say about these vehicles, and then you can make some decisions as to whether your next car is going to be a 330IS or not. Well, thank you very much, Martin, and we'll see you next time.
Always a pleasure. Thanks, George. Thanks, Wandile.
Thanks, Martin.
So there we have it, our very own Martin Pretorius. Wandile, what do you think? Would you buy one?
It's really expensive. Martin did give the same scoring to, I think it was a 420D, BMW 420D.
Yeah.
So, if I had to take, kind of a limited edition homage vehicle versus the 420D, yeah, you'd have to, ask me over about a span of a week because I just wouldn't be able to decide.
Okay, interesting. The 4 Series is a nice car, actually. Well, that gets us to our Ask AutoTrader piece, ladies and gentlemen. And every day people send in AutoTrader questions to our Ask AutoTrader platform, all things car buying and selling. And today we've selected again 3 questions. What's the first question, Wandi?
So we have 3 interesting questions this week. The first one comes from Romanov, who's asking, what makes American full like the Chevy Suburban or the Cadillac Escalade unsuitable for South African roads?
I think first of all, Romanov, I'm not sure if that's Russian or Czechoslovakian, but you've got not to be scared. But Romanov, to be honest with you, it is really the side of the car that the steering wheel is on. That's the main reason. The US market, the steering wheel is on the left-hand side of the car because they drive on the right-hand side of the road, and left-hand drive cars are not allowed to be registered in South Africa any longer. And so if you bring that car into South Africa, first of all, you've got to get permission to bring it in. You've got to bring it in, and then you've got to have it converted, which costs a lot of money. So I suppose, it's really the side of the steering wheel in the car that makes it, not fit for purpose for South Africa. And and besides that, the size of the cars in the United States are big because their roads are wider, their parking bays are bigger, and I'm pretty sure their parking garages are bigger as well. So you battle with American cars in South Africa because of the sheer size. Everything's bigger in America. In South Africa, we follow European standards, I think, when it comes to sizes, parking bays, road widths, all that stuff.
100%. I mean, there are a few 2013, 2014 Ford F-150 Raptors on the AutoTrader websites, but they do cost about 1.4 million with a mileage of around 80,000. So they are quite expensive because the previous owners had to do those conversions that George was speaking about now.
Exactly. Next question, Wandi.
Okay, next question is also just as interesting as the last one. It comes from Gatlejo, who's asked, I just bought a house and I'm still waiting to move in. When is it the right time to buy a car?
Well, Katlejo, you know what? You're doing the sensible thing. As Wandi would point out, Wandi has a different view, and that is you can't drive your house, but you also can't live in your car. So you're probably doing the sensible thing in my book, which is sort out the place that you live first before you sort out your car. So well done. That's a very mature thing to do, rather than trying to drive a fancy car and not sorting out your living conditions. So once you've settled, I would give you the advice to first let everything settle down, make some monthly payments, see where your expenses land, and then start to search for a car on autotrader.co.za based on your affordability. And you can go and pick a range, a price range that you can afford, and then you can start narrowing it down from there. So right time, I would say let everything settle first, then start searching for a car, and hopefully you find one at some point in the future. Let us know, Katlejo, and we'll circle back and talk about it. Maybe you can send us a selfie. Next question, Wandi.
Yeah. Last question comes from Megan, who's asked, I wanted to ask what the AMG line is in a normal Mercedes. So this would be almost like an A200 with the AMG badging.
Well, Megan, first off, we were talking about the 333i Alpina earlier on, which was the pre-shadow line kind of body styling, etc. And then Mercedes-Benz got into the AMG body styling. So AMG simply denotes a cosmetic upgrade. It doesn't have any engine upgrades, and generally it adds AMG wheels, body kit, different grille, and detailing upgrades inside the cabin or to the trim inside the cabin, and slightly lowers the suspension, and it doesn't, however, denote an actual AMG vehicle. It's really AMG line, which is a body styling upgrade, because the actual AMG vehicle is not the same as our AMG line in terms of its mechanics. So the AMG line, the mechanical nuances, or should I say, mechanically the car is exactly the same as the non-AMG line Mercedes-Benz's. And so it's built on the same production line, and really just the styling that changes.
Awesome. That's all I have for you.
Well, there we go, ladies and gentlemen, and I suppose that brings us to the end of another AutoCentral show, and it's been epic under lockdown level 4. Wandile Sishi, and my name is George Mienie, and we will see you next time.
Sounds good.